I would highly suggest. Yeah, he has a great. He's a very famous book is Trial of Henry Kissinger. That's a great book. No One Left to Lie, The Triangulation of William Jefferson Clinton. That's a great book to read. Letters to a Young Contrarian. That's an interesting book to read, especially if you're at uni and still haven't found your place. Some people call that his like his swan song, his best book. Some people have argued. Hitch 22 is interesting because it's a bit of an autobiography thing. I read that. I found that interesting. I haven't read Why Orwell Matters, but I have read some of his articles that he's a very big fan of George Orwell and his writing. And George Orwell was also a journalist who was also fought in the Spanish, war and all that. So he felt a bit of, I think, sympathy and empathy with him. So, but I would highly suggest his articles at The Nation before the Iraq War, mostly. But even his this was what I was looking for, the pamphlet. He has this great pamphlet, Karl Marx and the Paris Commune. That's a great one. And this is the one about the Mother Teresa, the missionary position, Mother Teresa in theory and practice. As the name suggests, you can see he always liked to, make fun of them as well. So the missionary position, because Mother Teresa was a missionary. The book he contributed to, co-editor with Edward Said, Blaming the Victims. Very interesting and fantastic book about the Palestinian question. So that's a interesting one. If you're interested in atheism and stuff, I would suggest the Portable Atheist: Essential Readings for Non-Believers. That's an interesting one. I would say to take a look at. So yeah, these are some of
I'm curious about the Clinton stuff a bit. So like, what's the Clinton stuff about a little bit? The book, just like a quick sentence.
The Clinton stuff. What's it about? It's about that his war records mostly, and the Lewinsky scandal.
Okay.
These are the two main focuses of the book, as well as. Do you know about the Clinton triangulation policy? That they basically they try to. This is the policy of the new left, or whatever you want to call them. That they try to steal the voters from the right by by outflanking the right on certain issues and separating themselves from the hard left. But I would say the Clinton stuff is mostly focused on his Lewinsky scandal, as well as his war record.
And that's interesting. You were saying he was one of the only people back then, kind of, at least, with his profile and everything, defending Lewinsky.
Yeah, definitely. At that time, he was one of the very few people that was doing that. By the way, he does also discuss his corruptions as well, because Clinton was heavily corrupt both in Arkansas and when he comes to presidency. I think he even goes as far as calling Clinton's administration a banana republic, which is fair enough, yeah. I think. So that's. He has a lot of. There is a collection of his essays called, if I'm not mistaken, let me check. Called, I think, Love, Poverty, and War: Journeys and Essays. That's an interesting one. That's published in 2004, and that's his articles from The Nation. So I highly suggest those if you want to read his work. But I would suggest watching a lot of his stuff as well, his BBC documentaries, that type of thing, because I think he was somebody who was, you need his tone played an important part in the perception you have of him. And yeah, that's these are some of the works that by him I suggest. I mentioned this book a couple of times, Unhitched, but sorry, by Richard Seymour. I think that's a great book to read if you want to read a critique of Christopher Hitchens. I haven't read much books, to be honest, of about him other than that. Like because a lot of stuff about him are, you know, are religious extremists criticizing him for his
Yeah.
critique of religion. So I haven't read good criticisms of Hitchens that much, but there are some. There are some good criticism of him by Gore. I think by Gore Vidal, by other left-wing people who criticize his position after war in Iraq War. So I think you should check them out for sure. Um, yeah, that's my 2 cents on his output, I suppose.
No, great stuff. Beautiful. So I guess we pretty much cover everything you wanted to talk about. We wanted to talk about concerning Hitchens.
Uh, yeah. There are two things I just wanted to do a short segment about his legacy. But before that, I would say one major thing I, by the way, disagreed with Hitchens was he was a Republican in a British sense, that
Mm-hmm.
he was anti-monarchy and he called for their abolition. That I personally disagreed with. So I don't, again, necessarily agree with him uh, a lot of times. But again, still, I think a writer worth looking into. And in terms of his legacy, I think it's sad that he's been boxed into this caricature that he was this lefty, that, oh, something happened that he moved to the right. I think he was beyond that, and he was better than that, to be honest. Although I do think some of his own works didn't help his case.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, it's a bit of his own doing, though. No,
I,
he's a bit
I,
responsible for that. I mean, when he was at the
I think
peak of his fame, which I guess is not his fault, but at the peak of his fame, the most important issue of the time, the Iraq War, those were the
no, no.
positions that he took
I
and defended.
I think it's mostly the fault of the short attention span of the people. People don't have the ability to follow. Like, people can support the same policy for different reasonings and
Mm.
different based on different values. And even if you sometimes disagree with their support of a policy, you can understand that. And I think it's mostly to do with that. And I do think he made a couple of mistakes, like defending Bush in an interview with Bill Maher. But I think if you read his work, most of the time he was being very clear why and how he supported
Yeah, no,
uh,
fair enough, for
the,
sure.
that's my so I'm very sad about the fact that he's been basically always now caricatured as this person who was left winger who basically betrayed the left and moved to
Mm-hmm.
the right. Worse than that, I am sad that he's just been characterized as a contrarian, kind of like Gore Vidal sometimes. He
Mm.
was not just a contrarian, he actually had views. And you see that Bill Maher did this thing. You remember, I don't know if you recall that awful human being, Milo
Yeah, yeah.
Yiannopoulos, the perverted. By the way, he has turned to Christianity after being gay and
Yeah, I
finding
heard.
that it's okay perhaps to having relation with underage kids. Now he's turned to Christianity. I mean, a huckster, somebody who's basically trying to sell, and then Bill Maher had him on as, Bill Maher has these people on to prove that I have debate with everybody. Good for you. Uh, and at the end of that interview, he says that, oh, I see a young Christopher Hitchens in you. And
Wow.
it's just,
Wow.
like broke my heart,
I mean,
really.
how?
Not
Why?
because I guess because of the aggressive style of talking, perhaps, or because usually Hitchens would disagree with most people. I don't think he was necessary. I mean, he did write a book called Letters to a Young Contrarian, and I don't think I hated being contrary to others, but I don't think he was somebody like Ben Shapiro or Dave Rubin or Yiannopoulos. I'm
But I
mispronouncing
mean,
the name.
if he's gonna say that about him, you can say that about like half the population. A lot of people are
Russian.
are contrarians or stuff like that. That's even if you thought that
Well,
was
I mean, he was British too, so they had a similar accent. So yeah, that was and Sam Harris also as well. Sam Harris in his podcast and in his writing sometimes he says, "As good my friend Hitchens would have said," or that. And I don't think Sam Harris really understands. Look, just
yeah,
even I genuinely like even Sam Harris, and I agree
yeah,
with him on a lot of his stuff. I just really think he's out of his depth when he talks on a lot of issues. Because if you watch his debate with Cenk Uygur, for example, I highly suggest you do. I genuinely think when he talks about that specific hypothetical situation, he's right. It's just he doesn't really understand that those hypothetical situations is not what we are talking about in politics. We are talking
yeah.
about completely different things. And but that's again, as I always say, I sound very arrogant. It's just my way of talking. I hope you know doesn't I do realize all these people are far more educated and far more experienced than I am. So take it or probably it's better to leave it. But if you can't take my views for what it's worth, but yeah, that's what pisses me off about his legacy to an
Yeah.
extent.
So I mean,
That's
two
why I
things
do
you would
not.
say. One is that he's really associated with his whole Iraq views, and the other one, maybe you weren't saying it this way, but in my head, he's been grouped in with, of course, with Sam Harris and the whole atheism movement, like just like kind of together, even if they were different in so many ways.
Sure, not so much grouped together with them, but I hate that a lot of people, new atheists and right wingers, use him and use his work for to promote themselves in a
Mm.
way. I think, in my view, like it's they yeah, I don't like that he's first of all if in the left basically they view him as this caricature that he was leftist while he was young and he became old and
Yeah.
rich and he moved to the right, and on the right they basically use his good faith arguments to push forward completely idiotic and bad faith
Okay, get you.
policy.